Hello and welcome to Build Series Sydney. I'm your host Danny Clayton, and joining us right now, a motorcycle racing, ski slope shredding British Army officer who's written a few songs, James Blunt, joining us here.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
I mean, firstly, how are you doing, sir? Are you well?
I'm so well. It's so nice to be back in Australia. You know, this is it's an old home of mine in many ways. I was here as an X Factor judge, and then the show was cancelled immediately after I'd been on it.
Cause and effect.
Yeah,
we don't know yet.
I was also on an American TV show, and that cancelled immediately after the episode I was on too. And after that, the phone calls have dried up.
Yeah, sure. So we should be afraid that this show itself could get cancelled.
Very much.
Right after filming.
I would expect so.
Okay. So you were staying in Bondi when you were here in Australia, weren't you?
I stayed in Bondi. I did the Bondi to Blunty walk every day.
Wow.
I might go and do that after you've released me from here. And I think, you know, because Australia is a really incredibly beautiful place, and it was a fantastic place to live.
Oh, stop it. Look at you, making us blush. Now, you're back here with a brand new album, which is right here, Once Upon a Mind. May I be complimentary? Can I be complimentary, or do you get awkward about that?
Oh, if you must, go for it.
Okay. So it is quite a diverse, enjoyable music experience. You've got peppers
Great,
of different
and it's
genres.
for $10
Yeah. Available now. And you've got this like folky flavour, you've got some dance flavours, and even at one point you've got a country song on there. So with all these different kind of music tastes, what do you think inspired you to go down this particular musical journey?
Well, I think if we were talking about previous albums, I'd be talking about the people I'd worked with and the musical inspiration that they brought. But really on this album, I have tried not to, and I really haven't worked with other people for their musical influence. I've written songs about my life experiences, about things that are going on in my life right now. And so the songs as you hear them are, as I hear them in my own head, they're about my father who's not been well, my wife who I leave behind as I sugar off on tour for 18 months, and my children who are new to this world. So yeah, if there's country in it, it's because because there must be country in me somewhere.
Yeah, and sometimes when I'm talking with some musicians, they say that there's usually like a seed or a moment that begins an album's journey. Do you think you had a moment which commenced your journey on this particular body of work?
Yeah, I mean it's not a very cheery one, but about 18 months ago, my father told me he had stage 4 chronic kidney disease, and he's been my hero all my life. He's an ex-colonel in the army, and I was a soldier too. But to suddenly realise his own mortality is a big moment, and you know, it's like that for all of us, really, isn't it? When we realise that chapter has to turn, it's like a club when a parent dies, a club that we all have to join, but one that we don't want to join for as long as we possibly can. And when I realised his own mortality, realised that I didn't have much time with him, was a moment then I thought I really need to write a song for him to tell him how much he means to me. And so the song's called Monsters. It says, I'm not your son, you're not my father. We're just two grown men saying goodbye. No need to forgive, no need to forget. I know your mistakes and you know mine. And the message is pretty clear that, he's much more than just a father to me, that he's my friend as well.
Yeah, that's very beautiful. I think that deserves a round of applause by all means. Let's talk about it very briefly, and then we can go somewhere happier. But the clip of you singing this song next to your father, emotionally manipulative, I think, just straight heartbreaking. If you watch that in public, you're going to start crying.
Yeah, totally.
It was...
misery sells.
Yeah.
And I've been dialing in on that. And I have been speaking to him, because he is through this process now. 53 weeks ago, someone offered him a kidney, and it's taken up until now for him to necessarily have that transplant. That's happening as we speak. And I have told my dad, you know what, if you don't make it, the song's going to be worth a lot more money. so pros and cons. Let's see what happens.
Oh my gosh, it's horrible. Okay, so one of the songs on the album, which is a little bit more upbeat, 5 Miles, which is just over 8 kilometres, if you were going to convert that to Australian talk. You've got your keys in the car and you're ready just to fly down that freeway.
Yeah.
I want to know what car it is.
It's probably a Russian-made Lada Riva, top speed 81 miles an hour.
Okay.
And so, nothing impressive. Because you know me as the guy who sang that song. I was on the subway, high as a kite, stalking someone else's girlfriend, using the rather lame line, hey, baby, you're beautiful. And anyway, that worked. Not on her, but on an audience. And 15 years later, I made a ton of money. And so 5 miles is a continuation of where I am now, because I don't go up to people saying, you're beautiful, and I'm not in the underground either. I'm outside. I've got a car, and it's a really fast car, and so I'm saying, hey baby, I've got a real fast car with the keys in, and that's just how shallow I am.
I mean, when we are talking about that song, one of the first things I saw from this record is Cold. And the music clip for Cold does seem like it's a continuation of what you did in that very first album.
Yeah.
And it starts off with you in the water. So it seems that you've been treading water for like 15 years.
And it really feels like that too. Because, 15 years ago, I put out my first album, Back to Bedlam, and You're Beautiful, the video. I threw myself off that cliff, having taken my clothes off and impressing no one. And that album and that song exploded around the world, and with that it was an amazing experience. Of course, I really loved it, and I've loved the music I put out, and I've had a fantastic time touring the world. 3 of my bandmates have married people from the audience, so you can tell it's been an experience. But on a musical front, I struggled to be as open as I was on that first album, because I was very much aware of the audience, and whereas I had no filter before, and I opened and I bared my soul in that, and then you get this criticism and this and this intrusion into your life, and it made me hold things back. And I love the songs I've done and released since then, but they haven't been as rewarding to me. Haven't given the same amount to me that my first album did, because music is about bearing your soul and it not being ashamed. It is about exposing yourself completely, and on this album, because of what's been going on at home, I have, and I feel like I'm no longer in the music business. I'm just back in the music, and that's a really wonderful place to be. And I feel like I've made my way back to shore after 15 years, and that's what the music video for Cold is. I make my way back to shore. I climb out, and bizarrely, I'm wearing the same clothes that I was in the Your Beautiful video, and they are actually the same clothes.
Lies.
I promise you.
No, you kept those. You kept those pants.
They have been hanging up in my cupboard where I live in Spain, in Ibiza, and they've been hanging up on the left-hand side of my cupboard. And every day I've opened my cupboard and I've looked at them and thought, it'd be a bit weird to put those on. And I've chosen something else.
Okay, question.
Up until now,
have you worn those clothes since the
I've
shooting?
never put them on.
Never put them
until
on.
that video.
Okay.
Yeah.
Have you ever thought to get rid of them, or are they too sentimental?
I thought, it's a big old video. I should probably hang on to them. Now I found a time.
Yeah.
And I had to suck in a lot through the video. So if you do watch the Cold video, you're watching a man. It's a 2-day shoot, and you're watching someone sucking in for 2 full days.
Yeah. It looks very cold. Where'd
you can tell by my nipples that it was very chilly.
Yeah.
The You're Beautiful video we filmed in Mallorca, and so I said to the director, "Hey, we'll do this in Mallorca," and he said, "No, we're going to North Wales."
Okay.
And it was
Yeah, and you're crawling over this desolate island for quite some time. It looks very, very uncomfortable, but very entertaining for us.
Thank you. Yeah, I mean, and again with Your Beautiful video, I was on the top of a cliff with and all the crew who were there had harnesses and ropes to make sure they didn't fall off, apart from me. Just thinking, you'll be fine. Well, you're going to throw yourself off at the end of it. And the same with Cold, all the crew, and I was told, now you just climb that cliff and mind out for the falling rocks and you'll be fine. So I'm obviously fairly expendable to the record label.
But you've been in the army, you're tough, you're built strong like that, so you can handle it. And speaking of, the Festival of Remembrance was not too long ago, where you performed in Albert Hall, which is, I understand as an Englishman, that would be a huge honour. What was that experience like?
Yeah, it's a beautiful building. You guys would have seen it from last night. It was the BAFTAs were there, and it's a fantastic place to play. I actually did my first ever solo in the Royal Albert Hall when I was 14 years old. I had to sing Good King Wenceslas Lass with my hands in my pockets and my squeaky voice. And I got to sing a couple of months ago Monsters, the song for my father. The whole royal family were there, Her Majesty the Queen, soldiers who I'd served with, and bereaved families who'd lost their sons or daughters in Afghanistan and Iraq. And my father was in the audience too, and it was one of the most amazing performances of my life.
Wow. It's incredible. And, when your dad's in the audience and you're singing that particular song to him, I mean, that obviously has gravity. But then did it feel like, with the Queen watching, it was like mum watching as well? Like everyone's mother, the Queen? I mean, that's must have been...
Yeah, you're just thinking, crap, I hope I don't forget the words at that stage, aren't you? But yeah, I suppose in many ways, you just know you don't want to let people down. It's like being in the army again. You don't want to let people down because you've got a bunch of soldiers there willing you on.
Yeah. What has been the performance of your lifetime, do you think? The one that has really stayed with you? Something.
That is obviously a huge one. Our most famous festival in the UK is called Glastonbury. And, it's something if you're a musician, you'd dream to be at. And I was lucky enough to play on the Pyramid stage, which is the main stage, to 80,000 people as the sun was setting. It wasn't necessarily my greatest moment, but probably the greatest moment for an audience to remember, because I fancy myself as a bit of a crowd surfer. My music's very rock and roll, as you know. And so halfway through the set, I jumped off the stage, ran to the audience, leapt onto the crowd of 80,000 people, crowd surfed, and hell, I'm as cool as you can be at that stage in my mind. And I ran back to the stage, and it was too high for me to get back onto. And a sense of panic started coming over me, and there was someone on the stage. I didn't recognize them. I could look up at this person, and I looked up at them and said, "Help me, help me." And as I did that, I realized they were holding a camera. They were the BBC TV cameraman.
Oh, no.
And I was looking down the barrel of the lens, and I was basically saying to the nation, "Help me, help me." And it cemented my position as the least cool person in the music business.
Oh, dear.
Someone had to kind of come around the stage and say, "Hey, come here." But I had to follow one of my crewmates around to the back. So, yeah, great for some.
All across the internet, by the way. If you don't look it up, it'd be disrespectful, but it's very funny. Someone else from your country, pretty big name, Elton John. He's been bouncing around Australia doing shows, and you're mates with Elton. Have you had a chance to catch up with him while you've been down under?
We do speak, because Elton, he had a manager, whose name is John Reid, who I think lives in Australia himself, who I don't necessarily think, that relationship as a manager went particularly well, as you can tell from the movie Rocket Man. And I think you could say John Reid didn't come out particularly well from the Bohemian Rhapsody, movie either. So, and Elton John, as a result of this, set up a management firm himself called Rocket Music to look after new musicians and give them a helping hand and to make sure they weren't done over in the same way. And I found myself on that management firm, and I am so lucky that Elton John exists in the music business. My first show with a band, I played solo shows and duo shows around London, but my first show with a band was to 50 people. My second show the next day was supporting Elton John to 50,000 people. And then we toured around the UK and we toured around South America. And really, without his help, I don't know if you and I would be talking today.
Wow, it's huge. And I thought it was very beautiful, almost like an ode to Elton, when you and Ed Sheeran did a cover of one of his tracks. Can you tell
totally.
us?
And Ed was on the same management firm. Ed's manager was my product manager at the record label, and was been my day-to-day manager too. And so, you can tell Elton's looked after many, many people.
Can you tell us how that came together, that performance? Because it was very striking.
Ed and I met each other in the corridors of Rocket Music management, and we quickly realised that we had similar taste in booze, and fell in love over that, really. And then we just found ourselves passing through Paris, and were asked to be we were on the same TV show at the same time, a show called Taratata, which is a very famous French show, and they just do duets, and would we do one together, and who would we duet other than Elton, who put us together in the first place?
Sure. And why did you land on that song in particular?
I think it had probably 4 chords, and all the other ones had 5. Or even more.
Complicated, of course.
Yeah.
Now, I want to talk to you about something rather peculiar, maybe not so peculiar, the Fox and Pheasant. This is your pub in Chelsea. I was looking at the menu, quite spectacular. There was a little truffle and brie number, which looked absolutely delicious.
That's so good.
But on Saturdays, I noticed that you have smashed avocado and eggs.
It's kind of an Aussie type thing, I would think.
That's what I was going to ask. I was so curious. Is this something that you picked up from your time here in Australia?
I'm not actually allowed in the kitchen, so no, there's nothing to do with me. But I have bought a 170-year-old pub in the UK called the Fox and Pheasant, which is my local pub. I would go in there, and we called it the Fox and Unpleasant, because it was so filthy. And I mean, when I bought it, there was grease flowing off the kitchen, literally flowing off the kitchen, and I can't describe other things. It was just revolting. I think There's a famous murderer in England, Fred West. I think he'd been probably working in the basement down there because it was just appalling. But anyway, I spent my time, a year and a half, sanding it down and varnishing it, and this 170-year-old pub, which people were trying to turn into flats, into apartments. And so I thought it's my job as a little pop star to save it. And yeah, it's a fantastic little pub, and you should come, the Fox and Pheasant, when you're in Chelsea. I'm fully trained to serve pints behind the bar, but the staff normally keep me out of sight. And we only play my songs at 5 minutes to closing time when we want people to leave.
Yeah. Yeah.
So if you hear You're Beautiful, you know it's time to go home.
Can you make a mean cocktail? Can you make a good a mixer?
No, I'm only a grade 1 qualified pint puller.
Okay, it's just it. Yeah. In fact, I'm impressed you're not a glassy at least.
Not a glass wash. No, that's the wife's.
Okay, so you've got a license, which means you can't play music. I've heard.
I can't play. We can't play live music.
You can't play live music.
Yeah, the council were very keen that I didn't try and get involved.
Oh, really?
On the stage or on the bar in any way. So it's just So our license is very clear that it's music from your iPad,
just to prevent you from
iPod
performing,
and not mine.
Okay. Would you ever be tempted to open up a pub which had a stage so you could support bands?
I think I'm really happy with mine, and I don't think I should. Should I keep them separate?
Okay. Something else that happened today on my way here was I jumped in the Uber with a very gruff alpha male bloke. You have to think of a real typical Aussie guy. And he asked me about my day, and I said, I was actually coming here to interview you. And he lit up like a light bulb. He got so excited. And this big, really ochre Australian man told me everything about you. And he told me about his favorite songs, and he told me about your new album. And I was very, very surprised. I didn't think he was a typical James Blunt fan.
Why? What did you think was?
I'm prickly. I guess I didn't expect some people a bit more in touch with their feelings, but he seemed like a very blokey bloke. And I was quite surprised. And so I wanted to ask you, have you ever been surprised by someone who's been a fan of your music? Maybe another musician, a celebrity?
I don't know. I mean, I'm touched that anyone would like my music, if I'm honest. I guess what happened was there was a really weird thing that happened when I first started doing music. I was signed to an independent label called Custard Records. The boss of that was Linda Perry and Four Non Blondes. I made the album with a producer called Tom Rothrock, who did Beck and Elliott Smith and Badly Drawn Boy and the Foo Fighters. So it was all quite independent in its approach. And then just with the explosion, and then I suppose before that, in fact, then I need to talk about the live audience was a really healthy mix of people, because I was singing songs as an ex-soldier who'd just come out of the army, and I was singing about war and death and addiction, because I'd had some experiences of that and with people who were involved in that kind of thing, and it was quite diverse in its subject matter. But then I found very much that as with the major record label that took over, they then did definitely push me in the way of, hey, there's this one song, You're Beautiful, and isn't James a romantic man because he sings this nice song saying you're beautiful. And as a result of that, I think that's why I think you'd think that my audience was mainly women. I think you're probably getting at, which I was very happy with. But I think it was confused in that the album wasn't a particularly romantic album. It was more troubled than that. And even You're Beautiful isn't very romantic, is it? I'm stalking someone else's girlfriend and on drugs in a public place. And it's just that song is actually very creepy, and people play it at their weddings, and who's doing it at their weddings, I like them a lot, because I'm creepy too. But yeah, so but I'm glad that your friend in the taxi has seen through all the marketing and realised that it's not just the romantic thing. That it was more diverse than that.
Yeah, I mean, one of the album songs that you're talking about that I guess it's not just romance, but No Bravery is still has an incredibly haunting music clip showing you on tour while you're in the army. And when you think about the James Blunt from that era, in that time, and you think about your life now, I mean, it must be mind-boggling. How do you think you've changed as a person since those years?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to say. It was a really incredible experience and time in my life where we dealt with life and death. And it is then really strange coming to a business in music and media as well, which is involved with what is cool and hip, which seems to be an irrelevance. But I suppose I've tried to keep a similar feel throughout my time of what's going on. I in the army, I had a team of soldiers who were experts in their field, and we looked after each other as that team, and we travel around in our tank and sent to various dangerous places. And I really do try and keep my touring relatively similar to that. I have a band and a crew; they're experts in their field. They look after me as part of that team phenomenally well. I go to slightly safer places, and my tank is just slightly more comfortable, and we call it a tour bus.
Okay, so a fair bit has changed then. So we've got a few questions coming in from the people watching, and a lot of people seem to be curious about your life in Ibiza. So we have one saying, how long have you lived in Ibiza, and what is it that you love the most about the island?
I like nightclubs. And that's why I'm there.
Red Bull vodka, I love them.
Yeah, it's an amazing place, and I just don't know why everyone doesn't live there. But London is grey and wet and cold, and Ibiza is sunny and it's got incredible food, and the Spanish people are really smiley and warm, and it's a really fantastic place. And the nightclubs are really good fun.
Yeah, brilliant. Do you still go clubbing?
I do, yeah. I've actually got a nightclub at the end of my garden I've built, and my band got me a big neon sign for it. It says Blunty's nightclub, where everybody's beautiful. And I have told this story, so you might have heard it. Forgive me if I'm repeating myself, but I've got everything from it. When I finished my tour, I said to the lighting guy, I'm stealing the lights, I'm taking to my nightclub, and I've got talking about disco ball and smoke machines, and I've got a red rope by the door and a mannequin. I bought into a mannequin shop and bought a mannequin, and I dress her up in dresses, and she runs the door with a clipboard with my friends' names. She's not actually the first person. She's called Svetlana, but Nadia was the mannequin who ran the door before her. But her back was broken in a late night experiment, and so I had to bury her in a shallow grave in the forest just behind the house in an ex-girlfriend's wedding dress, and that was weird. Why would you turn up with a wedding dress? So that's why she's an ex-girlfriend. But then I used the wedding dress for Nadia, and she's buried in this, and I put her fingers just sticking out of the grave because I thought because I thought that should be found, one day, and people would say, oh well, yeah, there's this weird dude who had one song and he lived on the top of the hill, and
oh gosh.
Anyway, that's the story. And my wife gets really brassed off with me because I'll go out shopping. And I'll come back with dresses, and like fantastic bits and bobs. And she'll go, "Oh, that's so sweet of you. I can't believe you bought me a dress." And I say, "Sorry, darling, it's not for you. It's for Svetlana, because you've got to change them up every couple of weeks, and the person on the door has to look good." So so my wife hates Svetlana with a passion. She'll end up in another shallow grave, no doubt.
Oh my gosh. See, when I was doing the research for this interview, I was like, all these stories I'm reading on the internet, I'm like, none of this can't be true. Who would come up with these crazy stories? It now makes sense.
Yeah. So no, Ibiza's a really cool place, and and the dance scene is really fun. I mean, it's very different for my own as a scene, but actually the music is it stems from the same thing. As a songwriter, it's exactly the same. And I had a big dance hit last year, and everyone goes, "That's isn't that really weird to be in that?" And it's, if you break it down, you take the beat, it's just the same. It's a guy on a guitar and a piano writing some chords. It's a song which I wrote for my last album, and the song was called "Okay," and I thought it was just okay. The song was just okay. It wasn't really very good, and I hated it actually, and I refused to put it on my record, on my album. I didn't want it on the album, and my record label said, "This is a hit. You have to put it on your." And I refused. I said, "I'm not going to put it on," and I threw it away, and I never wanted to hear it again. And then I bumped into a German DJ called Robin Schulz in Ibiza, in a club, and he said, "Oh yeah, James," I'm doing a terrible German accent, but forgive me. "Oh yeah, James, I heard your song. It's fantastic. I'm going to put it out. It's going to be a great hit, and it'll still be your voice and your piano and your guitar." And I think I'm going into a Dutch accent now, aren't I? And Anyway, he put it out, and the bloody song was a smash throughout Europe, even in the American dance chart and stuff like that. And I have to play the bloody song every night now. There's no escape. And so, yeah, the answer was the record label were right. It was a hit, and at the end, they'd probably thank God for Robin Schulz.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I even saw you performing on stage with Kygo, singing a song that an Australian lad, Conrad Sewell, usually sings.
Yes, I met Conrad, and it's a fantastic song. And God, I felt sorry for the audience because, imagine you're in an open-air nightclub in Ibiza. Yeah, you're on your one holiday that year, and you've been saving up, and then, it's like, okay, you're going to see Kygo. That's a big deal. It costs a bomb to get in there, and this club closes at midnight, so you're gearing up. You're loading up on whatever you need to load up on, alcohol, and you're getting ready for the big peak, and the last song's going to be the smash, and you want to woo, you're hugging your mates, and then they bring out it's James Blunt. He's come out with his guitar, and that's going to ruin the whole experience. I mean, with me singing some miserable thing. Anyway, Kygo, he whacked on a drum beat and kind of saved the day. But I pity them. My wife was loving it though. Woo!
So we've got plenty more questions from viewers. So I'll see if I can fly through these. You mentioned that it's tough touring and being away from your family.
That's what I tell them. Yeah.
By the sounds of it, you're having a great time. How does your partner take the whole long distance thing?
I think as long as we load up with just an army of nannies and help, she's fine with it. Okay. But yeah, I do leave for an extended period of time for 18 months, and it really genuinely is tough leaving home, and because I have a young family, and if I go for 18 months, that's longer than their lifetime, and so really tough. And I write songs about that. My song "Cold" it talks about the ocean between us, that didn't go down especially well when I said, "Hey, Dan, I've got a song about you. It's called Cold." But the message is clear, which is it talks about the ocean between us, and the message is without you, I'm just cold. But there's a song called Champions, and again, and I sing about the difficulties of being away, but together, we can be the champions. It's definitely not without its difficulty. It's really hard, darling. It's really hard. I'm
sure it is, sweetie. And how do you make it work? Is it a lot of phone calls, a lot of FaceTime? Do you drag them around the world? How do you make it work?
Well, I do have spare bunks on the bus, but I think normally I just tell my tour manager to call her and say I'm fine. He'll speak to you when he's sobered up. With FaceTime, the world is a smaller place. Isn't it?
Definitely. So someone's asked, was it difficult transitioning from the military into civilian life? And did your creative pursuits, help with that transition?
I think it genuinely is hard, and lots of my friends who've left the army really struggled with civilian life because in the army you're not out for money. You just you get paid a wage, and it's not a very big wage. So you're just there as a team doing the job that you're asked to do, and then when you get out, you have to fend for yourself very much. And my friends have really struggled. I was really lucky. I got into music and I've had a fantastic time and got a really fantastic team around me. And without that, I really probably would have struggled much more than I have.
Is there truth in that phrase? Once you've been in the army, you're always in the army?
Probably in many ways.
Yeah.
Yeah. My bus is immaculate and very, very tidy. If you want to come and
you know how to make a bed.
Inspect the bunks at 6:30 a.m. every day.
Brilliant. Look, we know you as someone who's a bit cheeky on the Twitter clapbacks. Someone asked, have you ever made a post that you've regretted?
It's one I've mentioned again. The
short answer.
Then again, no. It's still up there. You can still find it. Someone posted my guilty pleasure. My guilty pleasure is James Blunt.
Okay.
And I wrote, mine's anal. Yeah.
Congratulations. It's the first time anyone has said the word anal on this show. Very excited to have you in the studio, James Blunt. And a few people have now dropped a message. Nicola is one that she wants to come to Blunty's nightclub. So that's an important question. Can the public go to Blunty's?
I have actually. I've been in places like recording in Los Angeles, and I've got on Facebook, and I've seen a live feed from people in my house, in my nightclub, just going for it. So, I mean, the answer is speak to Svetlana.
Okay. Okay. I'll grab her number after this. And one of the last Q&As, who would you have play you in the biopic of your life?
Yeah, it's really hard to choose for me whether it would be either Tom Cruise or Alan Partridge. One of the two. My mother would hope for Tom Cruise, but we all know the truth is Alan Partridge.
Have you heard that comparison? Yeah, a few times, the Tom Cruise comparison?
My mother.
Just but up besides your mum?
No, everyone else says Frank Spencer. Do you remember Frank Spencer? and Steve Coogan's character, Alan Partridge.
Okay. I mean, is there someone that you admire, an actor that you'd still love to meet, a hero?
I mean, I think weirdly, when you get into the music business and the acting world, they're ordinary people. They really are ordinary people, and we put people like myself and others on a pedestal, and they're, if I have to be really unkind about it, an actor is just someone reading out someone else's lines, and me as a musician, I am just a minstrel. So no, I don't think there are many people I would aspire to meet who from those. We celebrate the wrong people. Greta Thunberg, what an amazing human being, doing something phenomenal at an incredible age. I'd like to meet her. She sounds like an awe-inspiring human being.
Yeah, I'm not sure if you know Norman Cook, otherwise known as Fatboy Slim, and his incredible remake of his huge tune Right Here, Right Now, where he features her speech at the UN.
Really fantastic.
And it was mind-boggling. So, so that's your pick then. Someone that you would love to meet would be Greta Thunberg.
Exactly.
Okay. Now, before I do let you go, you will be returning to play shows here in Australia. What are you most looking forward to about those shows?
I'm most looking forward to the special guest I have who's starting before me. The artist who's singing before me is Jason Mraz, who is amazing. And we've done a foreign exchange before when we were starting out, where he was my support act in the UK and I was his support act in the US. And it's gone well enough for him to sign up to come and sing with me here in Australia, and that would be amazing. So I don't give a stuff if you don't like my music. You've got to come for Jason Mraz, and the tour's not till November, so I know your diary's free.
Yeah, book yourself in. Well, I guess I'll be catching you the next time at Blunty's, or while watching Jason Mraz. But James Blunt, it has been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for coming into Build. A round of applause.
Thanks so much for having me. Really kind.
And please make sure you check out his latest album, Once Upon a Mind, out now.